Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Late last night, news broke that Warner Brothers is finally moving ahead with their film adaptation of the Vertigo Comics Sandman by Neil Gaiman. And that's because apparently David Goyer, the man who is now officially in charge of their DC Cinematic Universe, has figured out how best to adapt the source material to the big screen, which is what everyone is saying was holding it up in the first place. But Warner Brothers, enamored with Goyer's pitch, has given it the green light, and they're very seriously looking at Joseph Gordon-Levitt to star, produce, and potentially direct as his second feature film after Don John. In fact, they're saying this is almost a done deal. Is this a good idea, though? Is this a good idea for all parties involved? I think that it's really hard to tell. I think because every element of this package could go either way. So let's look at those individual components. First off, Vertigo Comics. Warner Brothers has really wanted to crack this publishing imprint of DC Comics. For a long time, it was, like the independent film distributor branch. That's how you could compare it. They made the more artistic, push the edge of the envelope comics, and very well regarded. But of course, when you're pushing the edge of the envelope, harder to adapt to the big screen because, as I think Alan Moore so famously said, every medium is different, including comics. You just can't straight adapt a comic to film or television. It can be difficult to do. So Vertigo has been difficult. And there's a backstory here that one of the reasons that Vertigo has kind of fallen apart as a publishing imprint these days, and Image has really taken over in the comic book industry for handling the best, most cutting-edge comics, is because the suits at Warner Brothers, when looking at their content, really were upset that all the Vertigo comics were partially owned by the creators. And so they immediately said that needed to be changed in the contract so that they didn't have these problems in trying to adapt them to the big screen, which meant nobody wanted to have their comics published by Vertigo anymore. So Warner Brothers has already, to some degree, destroyed the Vertigo imprint. However, recently, Sandman is one of their most famous titles. They've brought that title back. They're revisiting it with a new storyline that's just come out, actually. So, but anyway, despite everyone knowing what Sandman is, it's never been really one of those successful, hugely successful comics. It's really had a niche audience. So I think that you're not having a built-in fan base there. That if at least they show up, you're in good shape. They really need to cross over and bring other people in, even other comic book readers. So that's Vertigo Comics, and it's how difficult it is to adapt even their best-selling properties. For instance, Fables is their other huge one, and that is just now being decided for, I think, a movie with David Heyman from Harry Potter, as I previously reported. So let's move over to Neil Gaiman. Very respected fantasy author and comic book author. However, his material, again, hasn't translated so well, at least in the past. I think his best translation has been Coraline by Leica, the stop-motion animated film, and I think Sandman perhaps could even make a really great Leica stop-motion animated film. And I wish that they considered that, but I think Warner Brothers is looking to make money and build up these. Sadly, when studios hear comic book franchises, they don't think, well, what best fits the comic book? But I think they hear just dollar signs because of the way they've been performing at the box office, so that's what they're shooting for. So we don't want another Constantine, which was another Vertigo comic that the adaptation didn't go so well. And I think somewhat as a result failed at the box office. But it wasn't really even a great movie to begin with. So back to Neil Gaiman. So Coraline was a success, but also Stardust was not, which was a live-action adaptation of his work, and even a Matthew Vaughn film, one of Matthew Vaughn's earliest films, which really derailed his career a little bit, and he had to work quite hard to get it back on track. So Stardust, not a success. Now let's move on to Goyer. I have no doubt in my mind that Goyer has cracked the problem of how to adapt Sandman to the big screen. As I've said many times before, Goyer is a great idea man. My problem is when he starts to try and implement those ideas. I think he needs to pass the ball to better writers. So the question is, who is writing Sandman? If this is just Goyer's pitch that he's going to then, farm out to somebody else, and he can't write everything, I hope, as the head of the new DC Cinematic Universe. If his being in charge of it means he writes everything, we are in a lot of trouble. But as an idea man, I think he's good. So my ideal situation is he's cracked the code and he's going to give it to somebody else to write. So let's hope that's the case. And I guess it is good that he is championing these smaller comics, so kudos to him in that regard, even though a lot of us have major problems with what he's doing to some of the more well-known titles. So that's Goyer. Now let's move over to Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Joseph Gordon-Levitt is without a doubt beloved by fanboys, and he has his own fans outside of even the fanboy group, even just cinephiles. I think he's really built up a lot of respect in the community. which is impressive. However, he still continues to not be a huge box office draw. For instance, Looper only made $66 million here in the United States. Very small gross, especially when you have Bruce Willis in the mix. However, to his credit, and with Rian Johnson directing there, that reteaming after Brick, it did make, let's see here, it did do incredible foreign business. I think it made somewhere around $170 million in total for a very low budget film. I think it's around 30. So he did make money for the studio, and so that was a win for him. But still, not the powerhouse that I think that you want to put in a property that needs a powerhouse, because it's going to be a tough sell as it is. These movies, because basically, for those of you not aware, I guess I should have explained that, Sandman takes place, he's in charge of the dreams, and basically the initial setup is he's been imprisoned, he breaks free, takes back over the dream realm, and gets his revenge. So that's a very tricky setup. So I think that, you know, what comes to mind is What May Come, or What Dreams May Come, I believe, was that Robin Williams movie. I saw it a long time ago. When he got lost in paintings, and I thought it was heaven. It was a great idea. It got lost in itself. And I think you could have that same problem here with Sandman. So Joseph Gordon-Levitt, he's a little bit of a problem from the star power point of view. Now, as a director, he's only directed Don John. Now, granted, he did a very good job, but I think jumping into the deep end with special effects, and all these different elements, like a much more heightened directorial experience, and he's going to be distracted by also being the star and producer, I think that might not be a great idea for him. I think that he maybe would be better off bringing somebody else to direct and just producing and making sure it stays on track, and that it still has his artistic stamp of approval because he is that producer. He might even consider bringing in Rian Johnson, who potentially could do a really great job with this. Although I thought Looper had a lot of loopholes, a lot of problems, so I would be concerned about whether or not he could handle such a sketchy, delicate source material as well. So I think it's great this is moving forward. I think it's a really, it could be a real boon to Joseph Gordon-Levitt's career. It could be a great property for Warner Brothers, but I'm concerned as to whether or not, as I said, they're doing what's best for the source material instead of maybe what they're thinking would be a cool, quote-unquote, cool project to have in their stable. So what do you think of this news? I know a lot of you are asking me about that. It's the first story of the day, so write your thoughts down below. Second and third stories of the day is that the Game of Thrones cast is getting work outside of Game of Thrones. Of course, we saw Peter Dinklage was one of the first people to be picked up. I'm waiting for someone to pick up Joffrey, although I think there was a rumor that he said he was going to maybe quit acting afterwards, because I don't know if this is such a memorable part. He probably will be forever be King Joffrey. But anyway, the first is Emilia Clarke has won the role of Sarah Connor in the Terminator reboot. I have mixed feelings about this. I have to say that I think if her character on Game of Thrones didn't have 3 pet dragons, I don't think she'd be as cool, or her storyline would be as interesting. I think that her character has even to some degree become a little bit annoying. And for the love of God, your captain of the guards or bodyguard has a massive crush on you. Stop stringing him along already. Although to his own fault, it's his own fault. He should just, put it all on the line and see what she says and then leave or stay. So anyway, Khaleesi, I think, is not as beloved a character as the producers of the new Terminator reboot might think, just because she's on a lot of, she's the character that gets naked a lot and has dragons. Of course she's going to be on the cover of stuff. So she's going to take over the role. She won it over Brie Larson from Short Term 12. I think of the two, I would have preferred Brie Larson, but I don't know. I think Sarah Connor is such a difficult role to pull off after Linda Hamilton. And if you're keeping Arnold Schwarzenegger as the cyborg, I think it's ridiculous to recast everyone around him. This doesn't make any sense to me. And Jason Clarke, who's in the Dawn of the Planet of the Apes film coming up, he's in talks to play John Connor. So that's that cast coming together. I feel this doesn't seem like a winner to me, especially since Arnold Schwarzenegger has been so hit or miss at the box office. So we'll see. But Emilia Clarke, this is, again, a big, huge opportunity for her. If she can pull it off, great, but I have my serious doubts about that. Now, her husband from season 1, Jason Momoa, for the second story of the day, is being, it was reported last week, season talks to take on some kind of role, some secretive role in Batman Superman 2015, or now I guess we should just call it the Trinity film. Now, Jason Momoa, a lot of you have said to me, Grace, you're too hard on the DC movies, have faith. But I have to say, I would be pretty impressed with anyone who could effectively defend a casting choice of Jason Momoa, considering the films he's made in the past. Sure, he might have been on Game of Thrones, but as you might recall, he had hardly any lines. And And I think that they just mostly hired him for his physique. I think these days, if you hire Jason Momoa, it's because you need a giant, muscular guy. I mean, after he just totally destroyed and was at least at the front of the helm, he was the face of the Conan reboot failure or remake failure. I don't know why anybody would want them anywhere near their film. He was also in Bullet to the Head with Sylvester Stallone. I mean, the guy is just such a big string of flops in his wake. Who would want to stick them to their big project, especially when Man of Steel disappointed a number of people? I think you want to try and have the best cast going in there. And, we're going from Kevin Costner and Michael Shannon. Regardless of how their performances might have turned out, at least going in, they were very highly regarded to, Gal Gadot and Jason Momoa. I mean, this film, if you didn't know it was a Man of Steel sequel or a DC property, I think if you just heard that that was the cast, you'd be, and Ben Affleck and Henry Cavill, you'd be seriously concerned. Also, by the way, we don't hear a lot about Amy Adams and stuff, do we? I don't even know if she's signed on for this film, so it'll be interesting. But there's a lot of speculation as to who Momoa is playing. There could be, some people are saying Doomsday, Lobo, I think maybe even Orion. Who knows? But then is also, is the cast getting too crowded? They don't seem to have a villain. Perhaps it will be Doomsday. And then if it is, Jason Momoa doesn't need to talk. And you're not even really going to see him underneath all those bony protrusions. So who knows? But I think no matter what, I think you can do better. I think casting Momoa at this point, he is a known commodity and is not known in a good way. So those are the 3 stories for the day. The viewer question comes from Derry Mac D, or Derry, who signed her name. Thank you. Hi, Derry. It says, hi, Grace, long-time viewer, first-time question asker. I love it. Thank you, Derry. I love these first-time questions. What movies growing up sparked your interest in film? I've always wondered this after watching BTT for years. Thank you, Derry. I really appreciate that. Keep it up. Keep up the good work. These videos make my day. You made my day, Derry. That was such a great comment to read. That's a great question, and that's another reason I picked it. I think I was inspired not so much by a particular movie, but I think by the movie-going experience, the epicness of it, how I think I was really swept up into a world. I liked the experience of going to the movies. My parents took me from a very young age. I remember them taking me in my pajamas, which was fantastic. The funness, the ride factor of it is a big plus for me. And I know that everybody gets into movies for different reasons. A lot of people get into it because they're exposed to a lot of art house and indie films. And I think you gravitate towards what you were exposed to. For me, I really loved the blockbusters, the popcorn flicks, the party at the theater, the movie that people lined up around the block for. I can still remember going to the Ziegfeld when I was little and racing down 6th Avenue because I knew there'd be a big line there, and seeing a line of literally hundreds of people, like 10 deep, going all the way around the block, like halfway around, almost around a full city block. Because if anybody knows where the Ziegfeld is, it starts like in the middle of the block on 55th Street, I believe, or 54th, between 6th and 7th Avenue. And it would go all the way down 54th, down to 6th, over to 6th, up to 55th, and back up. So where there's a courtyard in front of the Ziegfeld, and you could see the end of the line from the front of the, you could see the front of the line from the end of the line. And stuff like that. And I remember looking at movie posters, going to see movies when I would go to the multiplex. I would remember looking at these upcoming attractions with my parents and just, getting excited about that. So the anticipation to me, the business of it has interested me, and I think because I liked those big blockbusters, and I think you can see that that's what I gravitate towards in my coverage. And I think however someone's movie tastes are kind of, you can see that's where they came into it. I also really I think I was really enamored of Derry growing up with classic films. My parents really exposed me to a whole bunch of films. I think everyone who's a budding film lover should not forget the original classics, from the beginning of sound, even some silent films, to today. I loved watching Hitchcock films. Hitchcock was a huge influence on me. And my 3 favorite films of all time, as I've said, used to be Rear Window was on there, but it is The Dark Knight. Racing Arizona used to be on there. Rear Window, The Dark Knight, and I just added Saving Mr. Banks. But for a while, it was Rear Window, Raising Arizona, and The Dark Knight. And I just think that you can kind of tell what got me into film. And I love the pageantry of it, and that's what's exciting to me about movies, the whole experience. So that's one of the reasons I continue to like going to the movies, and I hope that never goes away. I think the shared experience is really important. Although they are starting to make these smaller films that I think should go directly onto demand, because going to the movie theater can be quite a chore these days, with them not maintaining the theaters properly and, you know, rowdy crowds. I went to see later tonight I can't post it till midnight, but my Anchorman 2 review is going up, and, you know, for about 10 minutes in the movie, this guy came in late to meet his girlfriend. They were sitting next to us, and sure enough, they talked for like a good 10 minutes, like catching up with each other about their day in the middle of the movie. So I know a lot of you in other countries have said this is very weird to you, that people talk during movies, and I wish that it was weird here, but it's not. So I think that you know, the lack of movie theater etiquette is really, that's what's pushing people to watching movies at home. So thank you for your question, Derry. I'm sorry I couldn't point to a specific film, but I think that as I said, the movie-going experience is what's hooked me and made me so interested in contributing to that or being a part of that. So thank you so much for your question. Everybody, please write down below what you think of today's top stories, as well as the viewer question from Derry, and write below anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow and any questions you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.